Hello friends, welcome to another episode of the Riflechair channel. Today I want to talk about a rifle which you have seen in a whole bunch of my videos. This is a beautiful 1943 Izvesq Model 9130 PU sniper. Now, I've had this video and this rifle in a whole bunch of my videos, and I've loved it. I mean, it shoots accurately. I've had some fantastic success out to around 500 meters shooting steel with low quality ammunition. And one of the things about this rifle that I think makes it really outstanding is the fact that it shoots everything really well. And that has just always confused me. Doesn't seem to really matter the quality of the ammunition I'm feeding through this rifle. It shoots really quite well. So I've done some hand loading. And I'll show you some targets in a minute. I've tried a whole large variety of military surplus firearms, seal cased, cold block, Cold War era ammunition out of this rifle, and it shoots it all exceptionally well. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this rifle in this video, and I'll roll some close-up footage of the rifle as we discuss certain areas and points of the rifle. So I originally acquired this Cold War Warrior a number of years ago from Marstar. They got a small, they imported a small quantity of them in cases. I don't know where they got them from. It could have been from the Ukraine or any of these other ex-com bloc states. But as you can probably see from the appearance of this rifle, this is an experienced rifle. This thing definitely went to war to some type of another. The finish is scratched and marred, and there's a couple of dents in it, and the finish is generally largely removed in certain areas, especially in this area where I've got my left hand, where the shellac and the varnish has been removed. When I got it, I was a little bit concerned because the bore, I mean, it was covered in cosmoline, really dried up though, and the bore had it looked like loose rust, like a powdery, fine talcumy kind of rust. And when I removed it from the barrel, I was going, oh no, this thing's got a rusted bore. However, the bore on it is absolutely brilliant. It's like mirror bright, razor sharp rifling from the throat to the muzzle, and it's incredible. So what the hell is all that material in the barrel? And it's a good question. I don't know. I suspect that it was stored for some time in an area that had iron-rich soils, kind of talc-y, really silty, dry soils. And places like that come to mind. You might say, where does like rust-red soils come from? And wherever this rifle was stored was in a place like that. I figure, it was in a fairly dry, dusty place, and that talc-y, like rust-red dust just settled inside the barrel of this rifle for some reason, and on some of the exterior surfaces, it took me a little while to clean it out. So that's kind of interesting. You never know where these rifles are bounced around on the inside of a truck as it moves from point A to point B to point C, and where they eventually end up stored and sitting in grease. Who knows where this thing had landed? Anyway, so that was interesting. Now, there were a whole bunch of PU snipers that came into the United States and Canada. They're referred to as the Molo series, where a bunch of them have been electro or laser engraved with different logos, imported from Russia and stuff like that. This does not have any of that stuff. It has a tiny little stencil mark, which I believe probably is the same as the Molo or the Molot imports. But this is an actual PU Soviet War era sniper. It is. It has all the right markings, and none of these are reproduction parts. Sure, some numbers have been stamped out and replaced, but these are not features that were added recently, judging by the corrosion that you can see with a magnifying glass. You look inside some of these where the numbers have been stamped out. This is not something that happened recently. Anyway, very interesting. So this is an original PU sniper, and the number on the barrel here matches the number on the PU sight. When I got it, all of the turrets were wrapped with wax paper and grease, and it also has you can see a soldier somewhere has actually repainted some of the brass surfaces so that they're not shiny. He doesn't want them to be shiny. Also very interesting, and I think you'll agree with me. I've seen a whole bunch of these rifles similar to this one, where the shellac has had some form of a stain or a brown dye mixed in with it. So when this rifle was shellacked, it probably occurred in the field somewhere, and I'll show you a rifle that does not have it, just for comparison. Another Model 9130 factory rifle. It's been refurbed, but you know, the Arctic birch, well, we'll get into the wood here in just a second, because I think that's something you guys are interested in. But the birch stock on this thing it does not look anything like the color that you see on this rifle, right? So the actual, the wood color has been darkened on this rifle. So if you're a sniper and you're taking up a shooting position, by the way, this is a sniper rifle as well. It's a Lee Enfield. I'll put that down for now. But if you're a sniper, you probably don't want, shiny, bright surfaces on your rifle. If you're trying to take up a concealed position and engage a target at distance, it might not be that far away. So a form of camouflage for the rifle. I've seen a few of them like that. And the stain on this PU sniper it's darker than almost all of the other Model 9130s that I have personally looked at. So that is interesting. The wood is a birch stock. All of the MOSIN Nagants from Russia that I've seen have got birch stocks on them, and the species for this one is I'm estimating it to be Betula pubescens, which is a species of birch that is all over Eastern Europe and Russia, generally between the 50th and the 65th parallel. There's kind of a band along the former Soviet Union where this tree grows really well. And those are fairly dense forests, and there's a lot of birch. I mean, how many millions of these Model 9130s were manufactured? A lot. And they were sent all over the world to fight fascists and to support proxy armies that were fighting the known free world as we know it today. So yeah, this was an enemy soldier's rifle. I mean, we always try to think of the communists, or the Russians, I should say, as our friends, because they were an ally during World War II. But it was a temporary agreement, let's put it that way. Fascists were the most important enemy of the day, and so we combined forces in order to try to eradicate that threat. And truth of the matter is that the Russians, let's just say, the losses that they took during the war were just absolutely unbelievable against the Germans. And I firmly believe that, honestly, it was the Russians that won World War II. Without them, there'd be no hope. Anyway, unfortunately for us, the communists became our enemies after the war, and this became an enemy's weapon. Today, it's in the hands of a law-abiding Canadian, so I feel fortunate to be able to tell you a little bit about this rifle. One of the things that I particularly like about it is because it's got the birch stock. Now, Betula pubescens isn't a species that we really have here in any large magnitude in the area that I live in. We have Betula papyrifera, which is also called paper birch. And it's interesting because there's a whole bunch of different common names for that species. And the same thing for Betula pubescens. I mean, there's 5 or 6 different common names for the same species. Brown birch, white birch, silver birch, and a whole bunch more. And another name for it is Arctic birch. Betula pubescens. Okay, people that are in the MOSIN Nagant world that like MOSIN Nagants call this Arctic birch, but it's really Betula pubescens. And it's all over Siberia and all over Russia, even well up into the Arctic. This stuff grows in the Arctic Circle. I mean, it grows pretty much anywhere. It's able to grow in wet areas. It's able to grow in frozen soils. I mean, frozen soils, or what do you call it, frozen soils? I mean, it's so anyway, a very, very hardy species, and it does very well in cold environments. I mean, if it's going to grow, sure, there's short, stunted trees. Nothing's going to grow exceedingly well in the Arctic, but it just has a very, very broad range from very large trees down to tiny little bushes that you would consider to be, that's not a tree, that's a bush. No, it's actually a tree. It's just extremely stunted from the poor environmentals that it has to grow in. Frozen soils and whatnot. Very, very, very short growing season. So a very hardy species. And one of the reasons why it's good for a MOSIN Nagant is that these rifles are having to work in very, very cold environments. It is not prone to crack like so many other species. Right? The Germans, even though they were running laminated stocks, it was so cold, those laminated stocks were cracking. And look at the handguard on these things. This is very, very fine wood. I mean, this, what, a 1/16 of an inch in diameter or somewhere around these curves? None of them, I've not seen many that were cracked. Because it's that kind of species of wood. It's design. I mean, I guess you could say the closest thing to relate to it would be feng shui, where you know you're going to build your house out of the wood that was. Say you're on a north-facing slope, you're going to build your house out of wood that was grown on a north-facing slope. I mean, just different things like that. You're going to want to use a wood species in an environment where it can be naturally kind of, how should we say, sourced. All right, and the Arctic birch or the silver birch, whatever you want to call it, Betula pubescens, is one of those species. Very, very suitable for working in northern Russia or in central Russia, where it can be exceedingly cold, -40 and -50 degrees Celsius, and not crack or twist or warp. Now, they gave themselves a lot of material. These are pretty meaty stocks, and these are heavy rifles. But let me tell you, these things shoot exceedingly well. Now, some of these MOSIN Nagants have, especially the Finnish models, the M39s, the M27s, they have very nicely figured wood. Very few of the Russian stocks have nicely figured wood. Like you can see on this one here, this Russian sniper, it's very, very straight grained. Nothing really impressive about it when it comes to the quality. Like there's no tiger stripe or flame in it. But what you'll see with different wood species is that, for example, this walnut on this number 4 Mark 1T. So I don't have a number 32 scope on here, so you're just going to have to live with it. This English walnut. Again, probably grown in a fairly thick forest, because there's not a lot of flame to the wood, depending on where the wood gets cut from. Like, for example, the stump, where you see more fluting, you'll get more wave in the grain. But in Russia, where these pioneer forests, pretty much you get any kind of natural disturbance in the soil, birch will just naturally ingress, pioneer species. they tend to come in fairly thick, and where you have these forests that are really, really open grown, they be very, very branchy because you're getting full sunlight all the way up and down the tree. So the tree invests a lot of carbohydrate in developing branches. But if they're grown in a natural environment, quite often you'll see really, really tight density stands with a little tiny ball of foliage at the top, and you get these very, very straight stems with almost no branching and very straight grain. So you can tell generally by the kind of growing environment the stock was cut from as to how wavy the wood is. Some of them are just naturally wavy, like lots of maples out there just have natural flame in them. But birch has a tendency not to have a lot of those characteristics. Many of these stalks are relatively plain looking until you get into areas like Finland, where they had the Model 9039 Saccos, Tikkas, and so on. A lot of wave in some of that wood. Very, very beautiful. These are a little bit more open grown birch stands, and you'll get more of that figure in the wood when you have that situation. This rifle, one of the things that I particularly like about this experienced rifle is its appearance so far as, you look at the wood, you can see it is an experienced rifle, all kind of the scratches, and just look at the amount of varnish that's come off the forestock here. Well, usually when you have a rested position, this is where the rifle is rested, right? And it's pretty much where the balance point of this rifle is. If I were to carry it in a natural state, I would be carrying it right here because that's where it wants to balance. Okay, so this Russian sniper was holding it there too, and I just get a kick out of that. I just get a kick out of that totally. Numbers are matching. You can see the number right here, which is matched to the number on the scope, and the English did that too. So did Canada with our sniper rifles. For example, this number 4 Mark 1T scope numbers right there on the wrist. All right. Now, it's unfortunately I don't have the proper scope for this. I was hoping to find myself even a reproduction or an original number 32 Mark III, but for now this Weaver Key 4 will have to do. It's a Weaver Key 4 with a wide eyepiece right here. But unfortunately, you can only get about a 33 millimeter objective on these rifles without having to cut into the wood, and I'm obviously not going to do that. So anyway, this video is not about this rifle. It's about the sniper, the PU. Now, performance. I'll pull out some pictures of the. I don't have them here right now. I'll have to do that indoors. Give you some pictures of the targets. Now, I've shot a lot of ammunition through this PU sniper now, and like I said, everything just seems to shoot well. It doesn't really seem to matter what the load is. All of the groups are about the same. So essentially, what I'm doing is I'm loading for velocity. And because this rifle has a 28¼ inch barrel, is exceedingly long. All of these MOSIN Nagant rifles do, the Russian ones, with the exception of the M44, of course. They have exceptionally long barrels. So it just seems to me that whatever kind of variation that you have in the ammunition you're running, whatever powder is in that barrel, chances are it's been burnt up by the time that bullet actually leaves the muzzle. And your standard deviation so far as pressure and velocity just seems to be reduced as a result of that in comparison to a shorter barrel.
2 inches of the outside of the disc.
Really impressed with the overall accuracy and the balance of these rifles. Also, the BDC cams built into the PU scope here. I'm shooting at 100 meters, bang, it's at 100 meters. I'm shooting at 200, it's bang at 200 meters, just with 147, 148 grain ball. And regardless of the manufacturer, at least one thing that I think the Soviets and the Comblock states did right was standardization of the rifles and of the ammunition that they're firing out of it. Doesn't matter, you go grab yourself some Chinese ammunition, you put it in this rifle, you're going to be pretty darn close. As if you're running Czech, or if you're running Bulgarian, or if you're running actual Russian ammunition out of these rifles, they're all pretty darn close. And wow, really, really impressed. It just takes a lot of the, I got to figure out what my BDC is. No, you're going to be pretty darn close. These scopes are great. I've had these scopes out in minus 30, minus 40 degree weather, Celsius, mind you, and brought them indoors, and the internals of the scope did not fog up. Yes, the exterior lenses did, but the internals did not. And these things are, the seals have held on these optical sights. To me, that is incredible. For a 70-year-old optical sight, I mean, this was made in 1943. And it's still nitrogen purged, or whatever it is they used back then. To me, that's incredible. Solid mechanical scope. So I just wanted to spend a little bit more time telling you about these rifles, because you've seen them in so many of my videos, and I never really talked about the rifle itself. An interesting part that some of you may or may not know is that this barrel is not free floated. It makes contact in a 4-inch band right around where this front, where the front band is, on about 2 to 3 inches on either side of that band. It's making full contact with the handguard and with the forestock. It is free floated in the middle up until right around here. Right around here, it's making contact as well. Not under a lot of pressure, but you can't get a piece of paper in between the barrel and the stock. There's no doubt a reason for that, right? What a rifle. I'll hopefully you've enjoyed the video, guys. I mean, I can't say enough about these beautiful rifles. They're not much to look at. I think there's a certain mystique about the way they look, and about the time that they were made for that gruesome, horrible situation, World War II, war on the Eastern Front. But they sure worked. Germans hated these rifles, hated them, and you know, those Russians, you got to hand it to them. They're tough people, tough people. I believe Birch is, I had to write this down because I wouldn't be able to remember this, but if you're Russian, correct my pronunciation if I'm getting it right or wrong. Beryoza, or Beryozka, birch. And birch carries a lot of weight in Russia. It's everywhere. It's just a rugged species. It's it's resistant to the environment, and it's tough, just like Russians. Hope you're all doing well. Riflechair signing off, and as always, Maple Leaf up. hit?
Oh, wow.
Could you hear it hit steel? Could you hear it?
No, I can't hear
I
it.
couldn't hear it. It would probably pick it up in the camera though.